Hello everybody, welcome back to Off Meta Musings, where today we are going to round out our look at the allies that people are taking in their lists by finishing off with Grand Alliance Order. Across the entirety of the Grand Alliance, there are something like 185 odd heroes available for a player to choose. But this is something like 4 times more than the amount of heroes in Destruction and in Death, and twice the amount that you're going to see in Grand Alliance Chaos. So that's basically going to mean that there's a lot of redundancy in what you can pick. And it's actually a very common question that's asked by players. Which allies do I take? What's best for different situations? Today I'm going to talk specifically about those allies that people are actually including in their lists, why they're going to be brought for list building, how to use them, and what they're being taken for. Now, one thing that I do want to note is that this list has been taken from the various events that I've been to and that I've seen over the last 6 months or so, as well as different lists that you can see on the Warcry Discord and the Warcry Reddit. So without further ado, let's get going. I'm going to start here with the Evocator Prime on Celestial Draken line with Grand Stave. This is commonly known as the Thundercat build. And you're going to notice over the next 3 or so heroes that a common theme that you see when people are picking their allies for their warband is that they want to fill in tactical niches that they would otherwise not be able to find within their own faction. And you'll see it not just in Order, but across all the other Grand Alliances, that the most common of these that they need to fill will be for a big, heavy, hard-hitting damage dealer. And that's really where the Evocator Prime kind of fits in. It's sitting on the top end of the points spectrum at 315 points. Its stat line is very good. It's got 4 attacks at strength 5 with 2/6 damage. It's got movement 10, which is always very good. It's got a toughness of 5, which means most things in the game are going to be wounding on 5s, and it's got 35 wounds. So a massive wound pool, which combined with that toughness 5, you're going to be looking at a piece that can effectively survive the entire game, and with that melee stat line, it will effectively be able to kill pretty much almost anything that it runs into. Now, another thing about the Evocator Prime is that whilst it is a mounted model, it does not have the mounted rune mark. So this is actually very important, and it gives it an edge over a lot of the other mounted options that you can take, in that it's still allowed to climb walls, it's still allowed to get up and over terrain, which really doesn't limit it, along with its 10-inch move, which really helps get around that big base size, and it kind of helps to minimize any downsides that would otherwise be associated with mounted models. It's got a number of abilities, but the main one that we are interested in here is Cleanse the Realms of Taint. It's only on a double, which is very good, and it reads, a fighter can only use this ability if an enemy fighter has been taken down by an attack action made by them in this activation. This fighter makes a bonus move action or bonus attack action. I think that Games Workshop has kind of handed this ability out to the bigger, more expensive models to really allow them to compete over just having 2 or 3 other smaller units, because ultimately Warcry is a game of 1 activation, 2 actions, which means that there's only a limited amount of actual damage and impact that any individual fighter can do. So any ability that can really add to that, in this case Cleanse the Realms of Taint, is very important and very valuable, especially for more expensive units. And to go with Cleanse the Realms of Taint, I've got its damage profile here. It does have strength 5, so it'll be winning the majority of things on 3s. Its damage on a 3+, we're sitting at 10.67, damage on a 4 of 9, and damage on a 5+ of 7.33. The weighted damage that we have here is 10.25, and this weighted damage, as we remember, is based on an assumption that 25% of all fighters in the game that you're going to be facing against are going to be sitting at toughness 3, 50% are going to be sitting at toughness 4, and 25% are going to be sitting at toughness 5 or more. So in general, the Evocator is going to be winning on 3s. You see that 10.25 damage. The most important thing about this damage is that it's doing on average more than 10. Now, if you look at chaff units, and most chaff units that are taken in particular, you're looking at kind of 2 breakpoints for wounds. You're looking at 8 wounds, which is your basic skeleton graveguard, and then you've got somewhere around the 10 wound mark, which is kind of your slightly more expensive but still very cheap chaff unit. And what you want out of one of these fighters is something that will reliably be able to do those 10 wounds and to kill in 1 attack. Because then if you can kill in 1 attack, you can then use your double to then do another move, and then use your second action to do another attack, and even possibly kill a second fighter, really increasing the impact of your Evocator. Again here, in a similar vein, we've got the Akhelian King with Bladed Polearm. It's very similar to the Evocator, really. It's 305 points, so a little bit cheaper. It's got 4 attacks at strength 5 with 2/5 damage, a nice range of 2 on its on its bladed polearm. It has a movement of 10, toughness 4, so not as tough, with 35 wounds. This one does, however, come with the fly rune mark, so it's much more maneuverable. It really doesn't have to worry about terrain at all, so it can always use its 10-inch move to kind of get in and around exactly where it needs to get to. Now, there are a couple of flavors of Akhelian King. There's the bladed polearm that you can see here, and there's also the Akhelian King with blades. Technically speaking, the King with blades does do more damage, but my favorite is the polearm build, simply because I like to wound things on 3s, and that extra 1-inch range is actually quite nice for harassing enemy models. You can go within 2 if they have a range of 1, and then you can attack with no fear of being attacked back, so they're going to have to effectively waste a move action in order to get within range of you and then attack after that. So that kind of extends the life of the Akhelian King out a little bit past its normal 35 wounds and toughness 4. You'll see its abilities here. It's got a couple of interesting ones that we're looking at. We've got Low Tide, which is a first battle round only ability. So you really want to, if you're going to be bringing the Akhelian King, make sure that you're looking at your mission pack to see which deployment group it wants to go into. So if we're talking about a treasure mission, you want to check out that deployment group and probably put it in there. So then you can use your Low Tide and make your bonus move action up to the number of inches equal to the value of that ability. Secondly, it's got Storm of Blows, and Storm of Blows is effectively where it's going to get the majority of its damage boost out of. It's a double again, and you add half the value of this ability rounding up to the attack's characteristic of the next melee attack action made by this fighter in this activation. If we look at its damage, we remember what I said before, we're looking to do either 8 or 10 wounds in one attack. The Akhelian King is sitting at 7.5 weighted damage, so this generally means that you can't really guarantee being able to kill an 8 wound chaff model in one shot, and that's where you really have to use Storm of Blows to increase your amount of attacks. Hey everybody, Isan here. I just wanted to take a few seconds to really thank everybody who's given me their support so far. When I first started this project, I really didn't think that anyone would want to watch anything that I had to put out, let alone the amount of people and support that I've had so far. For everyone else, if you find these videos useful and if you like the content that I'm putting out, please give a thought to subscribing. For you, it's very simple. You press your button and I end up on your subscribe list. But for me, it's really helpful because it lets me know that I am actually building an audience and that these videos are useful to people and that they're enjoying them. But yeah, that's it, really. That's all I really wanted to say. Thank you again, everybody. And yeah, I will let you get back to the video. Finally, when we're talking about characters you're bringing for damage, maybe a little bit of utility, we've got the Mizzenmaster. The Mizzenmaster saw a lot of use very early in Warcry's life. It's sitting at 250 points. It's got a couple of different profiles. It's got a range profile and it's got a melee profile. At range, it's fine. 2 attacks at strength 4, 1-4. In combat, though, it's got 4 attacks at strength 5 with 2-5 damage profile, which is actually very respectable. It's actually exactly the same at the Akhelian King with polearm at something like a 55 cheaper points cost. So that makes the Mizzenmaster very attractive. The Mizzenmaster also has movement 10 like the Akhelian King. It's got the fly rune mark like the Akhelian King. It's on a much smaller base, so that really helps it during its games get in and around terrain. Toughness 4 like the King, but unlike the King, it's only got 20 wounds. Now, this makes it really on the weaker side of things defensively, and you really want your Mizzenmaster to be able to run in, do its damage, and then kill whatever it is that it hits, because otherwise it's really not going to be able to stick around in a protracted fight. Those 20 wounds are going to disappear very quickly in any kind of decent return attack. We have a bunch of abilities here. The interesting one that it brings to the table is the Fight for Profit triple, and that reads, until the end of the battle round, add 1 to the attack's characteristic of attack actions made by friendly fighters while they're within 3 inches of this fighter. If this fighter is carrying treasure or within 3 inches of an objective, add 2 to the attack's characteristic instead. So that actually gives the Mizzenmaster a little bit of a dual role here. It can provide some utility, a little bit of some buffs to fighters that are close to it. +1 attack is actually quite nice if we remember that any fighter can effectively use the Rampage double to get +1 attack, but if we can have the Mizzenmaster get close to a bunch of people, pop Fight for Profit, that means that it's the Mizzenmaster itself that's using the ability, and your other fighters are free to use other abilities that they might want to use. It's really a good force multiplier. It's effectively a little like Lead from the Back out of Skaven, but on a much, much stronger fighter. Now we're moving on to Cities of Sigmar here. There are a couple of options from Cities of Sigmar. The newer introduction to the list is the Wild Hunter. The Wild Hunter would be from Anvilgard in this case. Taking a look at, you can see it's got very good stats, 225 points, so it's not exactly expensive. 5 attacks at strength 4 with 2/4 damage profile. I think the additional strength 4 on this is nice. It effectively stops you from wounding everything on 5, so wounding most things on 4s, which is pretty good. Movement 10, so it's very fast. Toughness 3, so it's a little bit on the squishy side with 22 wounds. So at 225 points, maybe you look at springing the extra 25 points or so to pick up your Mizzenmaster. The main thing that we're taking it for here is the Show No Mercy triple, and this is really where the Wild Hunter can get a lot of explosive damage onto singular pieces. Show No Mercy reads, this fighter makes a bonus attack action. In addition, if the target of that attack action has 1 or more damage points allocated to them, add half the value of this ability rounding up to the damage hit points allocated to that fighter by each hit and critical hit from that attack action. So generally what's going to happen is on turn 1, your Wild Hunter is going to find something, it's going to run into it. On turn 2, it's going to launch an attack, put damage points onto whatever it's in combat with, then pop Show No Mercy triple to add between +1 and +3 damage. It's effectively a very similar ability to the Blissbringer out of Chaos, but the main difference between the Wild Hunter and the Blissbringer is, of course, the strength 4, meaning you'll have a far easier time of wounding and doing that bonus damage. Looking at its base damage, again, we're sitting at 7.5. I think, unlike the other two, where you kind of want them to run into chaff and kill them as quickly as possible, the Wild Hunter's kind of not Monster Hunter, but Dragon Hunter, as it would be. So the 7.5 weighted damage isn't as important as it is with the other two, because effectively what you're doing is you're dumping a bunch of damage onto a thing, and then you're going to pop your triple to do a lot more damage on the second attack. Now, secondly, what I have here is the Free Guild Sergeant from Tempest Eye, and it doesn't have to be the Free Guild Sergeant. I just picked it because it is the cheapest hero that you can take, but the main reason why you'd be looking at it is because of the Tempest Eye reaction, Oracular Insight. So a fighter can make this reaction after an enemy fighter finishes a move action within 3 inches of and visible to this fighter, so normally if it gets charged, and you add 1 wild dice to your saved wild dice pool. So this is potentially very, very strong. Like I said at the beginning of this, generally people will be looking to take 2 Tempest Eye heroes at once in order to really double down on that Oracular Insight ability. And it's a very nice pick if you're running a warband that might be very triple intensive, or maybe you've got like a key quad that you want to get off, or maybe even just make more doubles during your game. Tempest Eye as a whole is actually pretty versatile, I think. In addition to the Oracular Insight, they also have a bonus move on a turn 1 as a double. They've got a bonus disengage for anything but a Scout Room Mark, again as a double, and another free move on a double for Scout heroes. So they can outmaneuver the foe quite a bit. They can leave fights, they can zip around your opponents. Some other nice Tempest Eye options include the Dark Elf Sorceress, or the Wanderer High Sister for some decent kind of, not mid-range, but low to mid-range shooting. Again, they can use speed, use Oracular Insight, generate more dice for you, and generally I think there would be points well spent. What I've got here next for you are a couple of Sylvaneth characters. Now these are not really here for their damage, but I mean, you can see it. The Shadestalker has a fairly decent damage profile, but realistically what you're using them for is their utility to kind of plug those tactical holes that you might have in your warband. First up, we've got the Tree Reverend Scion with the Protector Glaive, 115 points, so very cheap. The main reason why you're taking him is for the Walk the Spirit Paths triple, and it's very much like the Dreadblade Harrow out of Nighthaunt. So you remove the fighter from the field, set up anywhere on the battlefield floor more than 5 inches from enemy fighters. So generally what you're going to be using this guy for is to teleport onto treasure, walk past it, pick up the treasure, and kind of get out the way with that treasure, and then try and protect him for later turns. Also, he can be very useful on objective missions, where he can just teleport over to the other side of the battlefield and go capture an objective that might otherwise have just been left alone, or might be fairly difficult to get to. Secondly, we've got the Shadestalker. Like I said, it's got a decent melee profile, 5 attacks, strength 4, 2, 4, 140 points, so not the most expensive, but what you're bringing this for is the Shrieking Terror double. Now, this is a net. You pick a visible enemy fighter with a number of inches of this fighter equal to the value of the ability and roll a dice, and on a 3 or more, until the end of the battle round, the fighter cannot move or make disengage actions. Of course, if you have access to nets in faction, then you wouldn't really need to take the Shadestalker. But if you are looking for that extra piece of utility on what I think is a decent enough body for 140 points, the Shadestalker is where you want to look. And that's really pretty much it for the time being anyway for your Order allies. There are events going on all the time, and I'm sure that this list will be chopped and changed around a bit, but up until now, this seems to be what we have been seeing. Like I said, there are something like 180 Order heroes, so there's a lot of noise in terms of just looking at the entire list of heroes, trying to filter out what you want to bring and what you don't want to bring. So I think this is a fairly good place to start, and all of the heroes that you see here have been proven in games before. But yeah, that's it from me. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know down in the comments if there are any heroes that I may have missed, any cool combos that you might have. I'm always happy to have the feedback and have a good conversation. So yeah, that's it from me, and I will see you next time.